Express code's located right to the right. There's a code on the door. Please use hashtag GBH@BPL, GBH News, Java with Jimmy, and Newsfeed Cafe in the social media posts. Please feel free to contact me or any member of GBH staff with any questions. And now to introduce my colleague, Miguel, who is the archive editor for GBH News.
Hey everybody, how are you? So my name is Lee Hill. Thank you, everyone. My name is Lee Hill. I'm the executive editor for GBH News, and it is my honor on behalf of all of GBH to welcome you to this special evening of light and joy. Somebody say light and joy. Okay. As we celebrate Pride Month and Black Music Month. All right? So, influencer, leader, public intellectual, convener, agent of good things. All of these are just a few words to describe James Hills. We also, some of us know him as Jimmy. Each week, Jimmy brings people together to promote healing, growth, consciousness through his terrific Java with Jimmy online program. And very similar to the work that we do at GBH News, Jimmy connects movers and shakers to the moved and the shaken. GBH News is transforming into one cohesive, audience-focused, multi-platform news organization that tells the most interesting, distinctive, local stories of the day, which are infused and informed by the diverse communities we serve. We are accomplishing this by creating an anti-racist, radically inclusive, culturally responsive newsroom without walls to better serve an increasingly diverse and curious population. Tell a friend, GBH News is changing. So we are honored to host all of you here tonight in our space at the Boston Public Library. Stretch out, make yourselves at home. And special thanks to Annie Schreffler. Annie is probably in the back somewhere. Evelyn Brito, Sandra Lopez Burke, Lisa Williams, Glenn Heath. Glenn, raise your hand. Our marketing and events squad, and all of our tech wizards at GBH, because it took a village to make this happen. And without further ado, James, it's your moment.
I appreciate you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Jimmy Hills. I am the host of Java with Jimmy here at GBH. I am honored to be here. And for those of you that are watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're watching, we're going to ask you to hit that share button and retweet and bring folks into the Java Cafe here at GBH at the Boston Public Library. It's a true honor to be here this afternoon, and I am excited to talk about two subjects that are very special to me. As a black gay male, being a part of the LGBTQ plus community, and the past couple of years of not being able to gather with others due to the pandemic, also due to some other things in reference to the Pride Parade that we'll talk about in a few minutes. I thought it was important to talk about that inclusiveness that the Boston Pride for the People was aiming for, and then also as someone that, as you all have seen recently, as yesterday, directing a choir and singing, music is very important to me as well, and understanding how music is powerful in bringing us together in our humanity. Music does not know language. It is not limited by philosophy. Music is a universal language, and so we're going to talk about the power of music and activism. But before we do that, I am honored to have a friend and sister here with me this afternoon that I have noticed throughout the past few years is someone who is authentic, and she is a change agent for those that are most marginalized, specifically black and brown people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, and especially those that identify either as a man with trans experience or a woman with trans experience. And so it is my honor and privilege to welcome as my very first guest in the Java Cafe, Java with Jimmy here at GBH. Please put your hands together for Adriana Boulin, who is the president of Boston Pride for the People. Give her a hand.
Thank you.
Adriana, welcome.
Thank you
welcome.
so much, Jimmy.
I am so excited to have you here. One of the things that we do in the Java Cafe is before we start the questions about the work, I need to check in on you, and especially coming off of Pride. You saw a little bit here of us getting together. My producer made the comment, and you thought putting a parade together was a lot, doing stuff here. But it was a lot, putting a parade together. You are a black woman in this country in a time where decisions about your body are being regulated by others. And so I want to check in on you, Adriana. How are you doing from a mental health perspective?
Thank you so much for taking the time to ask
Absolutely.
me that question. And I'm sitting in gratitude that you took the time to ask me that question. So thank you. We need to do that more, and I appreciate that you made the space to do that. I'm good. I'm feeling so full from joy that I experienced over the weekend and full from community. There is a lot happening around the world related to our bodies, what we have access to, where we can be in community with each other and feel like we can be ourselves. And over the weekend, that fullness has been everything for me. So my mental space is a full space. It's a fulfilling space. And also, there's so much going through my mind. Having gone through something we've spent almost a year planning and experiencing it, there's so many ideas and thoughts I have going on. So I'm finding time to take rest while also planning. I love planning, so thank you.
I wanted to ask you for a quick second, if I put this picture up, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Joy, gratitude, revolutionary, just, thank you for sharing. You were really getting me today.
That wasn't my intent. I'm
In a
trying
great
to make
way.
You all cry and whatnot, not me.
Just look at that picture. Look how intersectional, diverse. Look at the levels of power there, the privilege that we are sharing with each other in that moment. The crowd behind us, the day. For those of you who don't know about that day, it was cloudy that day, and it was getting ready to rain. Right before that ribbon cutting, the sun emerged and was shining on us in approval.
I was really there. And it was amazing, the power and the energy. I wound up hosting a meetup for Boston While Black. And just the invitation, they got to meet you. I told them that's the president putting this together. They got to walk with the mayor. The governor came over. One of the members viewed Saturday as their coming out party. And so it was so awesome that they got to meet you and others that were there. Thank you for putting that together and creating that space for them to come together. I know in the past couple of years, one of the things that has been a challenge in this city is inclusiveness and diversity. And I won't go into you. Talk about, you did kind of talk about it in the picture, but talk about what you're hearing or what you felt around inclusion this year, the diversity this year. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. There's so much feedback that we got day of or even in the days following of people saying, as someone who uses a mobility device or somebody that has specific accessibility needs, I felt like I had everything I needed to celebrate Pride in the way that I wanted to. And that's what we were hoping to hear. We were open to hearing other things so that we can plan better in the future, but we have heard a lot of great feedback of, I just felt accepted. There were spaces there for me. For those of you who may not have the opportunity to be there, there were special areas for families, teens, youth. There was an Elder Connect tent. There was an affinity tent with games. There was a quiet space if you needed to be in quiet areas. There was water available for people in tented areas. Everyone felt like they had a space. There's a 21 plus area and an all age area. So like you could do your thing. You could bounce through all of them. And so it just felt like the time that we had taken to be intentional and ask folks about their needs really accomplished what we hoped it would, and that felt really good to hear.
It was, again, I can only talk from experience, and I was glad that I was there because I concur with everything that you're talking about. One of the things that I wanted to name, I think a lot of times when we talk about marginalized communities, we are not intentional about the ABA community, those that have unique physical challenges. That's how I like to present them. And thank you for raising that, because we often think about, men and women, trans women being a part of the community, you naming that those that are part of the community but also have mobility issues felt seen and welcomed with intentionality of making it easier for them. I think we need to applaud that. That really needs to be recognized.
And I just want to also, you were talking about accessibility needs, I also want to name I think we had 12 or 15 ASL interpreters, both deaf and hard of hearing, interpreters on stage. And I don't know if you've seen the ASL interpreters at concerts like Beyonce's, but
yes.
They were in it, and I was
they were getting in. They were going in.
Yes. So we talk about mobility. We also talk about folks that need hearing aids.
Yes.
It was just beautiful to see that was available for folks.
Let me ask you, and often there is room for improvement, and sometimes I say there's a canyon for improvement. But what do you think? I'm hearing so much inclusiveness. I'm hearing diversity this year. Over the next year, what are you thinking about to make it more inclusive and more diverse? Is there, have you reached the plateau? Have you reached the mountaintop of inclusiveness and diversity? What can we look forward to come from Boston Pride for the People?
So, no, I don't think we've reached a plateau. I think we have so much work. Thank you. You rock. All of you rock. Thank you. Thank you. We have not reached a plateau. There's so much work that needs to be done still. A couple things coming to mind are we have a community survey that can be found on our website as well as our social media. We've experienced Pride, and now we want folks to share with us what are some major issues that are important to you and you think relate to Pride in our community. How do you think our parade and festival can be better? What are you looking for? Is a parade a march? Is it a parade? What is it representing? We want to understand what that is for people. So we're spending a lot of time working on our community survey and receiving responses for that. And we're also inviting folks on community meetings to ask what their perspective is, to talk to us about how that looks for them. And then also related to the plateau, we need more voices at the table. We're still building the table, and I think it will always be built to meet the evolving needs of our community and our city. There are people who experienced harm from the past, organizing, and we have a role in transforming and healing that. And as an organization, we want to think thoughtfully about what that looks like. And I've seen in racial communities there's been a framework of truth, racial healing, and transformation or reconciliation. And we believe there's a similar process that needs to happen in our community, and that will add to the voices that will feel like they can access and feel safe in the space where they can engage and work with us more. So more voices, more feedback, and openness. We're so open to we want to create. And so we just want to get feedback from people, and receiving that feedback and applying it to our plan forward is what our work looks like now through the next couple months. And also resting. You started by asking me how you're doing mentally. And I love our team. Our team is so rad. Just being a volunteer-led organization, completely doing something big while we all work in full-time jobs is hard.
So this is a volunteer?
This is 100% volunteer-led effort. There's no paid staff. We are all volunteers. We all work full-time, and we are up at night. We are here on the weekends. Some of us got kids. I don't have kids, but some of us have kids on our team, and our spouses navigating all different things and making this work. So also, what I would love to encourage our team to do is find some time to rest.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of work to be done, but find some time to rest. So we'll also be doing that too.
So it's so interesting where you're talking about the time of rest, but I'm also thinking about the fact that you're talking beyond one day. Pride is beyond one day. It's
Yeah.
beyond the parade. And you talk about voices and you talk about people. Can you talk a little bit about how important it is beyond Pride, the day, beyond what I've heard some feedback, you know, a corporation sponsor, they do things for one day, but in their policies, in their HR policies, in even where, in what they serve in their cafeterias, may not be related to LGBTQ+, because we like all type of food and everything, so that's not limited. But in reference to beyond Pride, can you talk about how important it is around the equity and empowerment of policies and people?
Absolutely. And I want to, in answering this question, I want to share with you and others our principles and
Absolutely.
then hone in on one principle that I really speaks to what you're asking about. So our organization has 4 main principles. It's to commemorate, which is honoring the folks that risked their lives or lost their lives for us to live a lot of the freedoms that we live today. And the second is to educate. There are folks who have risked their lives and lost their lives for us to live the freedoms today, but there are a lot of freedoms that we're not living today, and there are a lot of systems and structures that are working against us. The empower is that third one that I want to
Yes.
get to. Empower, if we're not resourced and if we are not supported around systems and policies that are not built for us to succeed, that are inequitable, then there's no way that we can be successful. Really looking at what areas of our work are causing disparities in people's experience, what areas are disempowering people, and seeing what is my role in addressing that
Yes.
inequity. How can I address that policy, that protocol? How can I create equity and build justice, which is fairness? That's how we see fairness in our community, and not just in our communities, in all communities.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. You all can clap for that.
And the fourth is celebrate, because we are worthy of joy. And
Absolutely.
I love a celebration, and I felt that's what Saturday was for us.
Saturday was a celebration. It really was. It was a celebration of pride. It was a celebration of family. The thing that really stood out to me, we met up at Back Bay Station, and you saw children, and you saw families, you saw all type of ages, all type of races and ethnicities, and it was really a powerful experience. I want to go back to one of the things that you said about the empowerment. How do you ensure that and we'll get ready to wrap up here. We started a little bit with self-care, but I'm going to ask you, how do you work with your team to empower them in this space of diversity, inclusion, self-care, being their authentic selves? How do you practice that yourself as being a leader of such a great movement in our city?
We all in this world system play a part. We all have a light that we contribute. I call it in my mind the great fixture. We're all a part of this great fixture, and we all contribute a light to the light bulbs in that fixture. And as a leader, I think just as a human, but I am a leader as well, but as a human, I want to know what your light is. And I want to know what the shady spots is. And I want to know your shadow, too. And I want to know how I can support you in navigating that. And I want you to know my shadow, too. And I want us to be able to work collaboratively. That's how we're authentic.
Yes.
We connect with each other as people. And there's no competition. Just seeing how you being your best self is me being able to be my best self.
Adriana, that is the thing that's so interesting, because there's this term of haters, and a few months ago I had this sort of epiphany that, maybe a small percentage actually hate. But the truth of the matter is they don't know who I am, and the saddest part is they don't know who they are. And so that piece about understanding, if I help build you and you're successful, somewhere along the line, that intersectionality, we're going to build each other.
Our freedoms are bound in each other.
Our freedoms.
Our freedoms are bound in each
You
other.
were dropping all type of nuggets today. All type of nuggets. I want to make sure we capture them and put them on reels and stuff after the fact.
Please do.
But Adriana, we do have time for a couple of questions, either from the audience. If you're listening out in the virtual world, if you want to type a question there in the comments, we can ask a question for you as well. But if there's anyone here in the studio audience that has a question for Adriana, we will be glad to take it. We do have one question here. Thank you, Evelyn. One of the questions, or this question says, how do we balance the ease and joy of our affinity spaces with the awkward but necessary work of building with allies? That is a very good question. You want to have the uniqueness of our tribe chilling together, there's a culture, but then you also don't want to do what other cultures do and you know, you're not welcome here or whatever. How do you balance that?
So I think there are times, in my opinion, there are times when it's important that we are sharing spaces with people who share identities and experiences. There's something healing about that to me, and it's a place where I think as a human being, as an individual, you can feel more confident in expressing as your authentic self. And I think it's both important to have those spaces just within the communities, as well as sharing spaces with allies. As an ally, I think it's important to do the work of understanding who you are and where that lies within the context of what's happening in the world, and the privilege that you have with the identities that you hold, sexually, gender, or otherwise, and how that relates to the experiences of the group that you're trying to create an allied connection with. So coming in and saying like, I don't want to pull a story because it might be real and the person might be watching, but, and what's important, and the reason why I say that is everyone's learning. And I'm very much a call-in person and not a call-out person.
Yes.
And no shade to folks who have different approaches. Yeah. I'm just a call-in person. And so I like to call in by sharing, just know yourself and know how you show up in spaces. And sometimes people don't know how to show up in spaces. And if you aren't in that place to show up in spaces where you understand your privilege in the context of who you're connecting with, don't show up. And like, own that. I think you have to understand the place that you're in to be able to exist in spaces with people who you're trying to create an allied, supportive relationship with.
Folks have to be real with themselves and to thyself be true. That way you know if you're going into those spaces authentically and with a pure heart to ensure that you are being an ally and not causing more harm and trauma. We do have one more question from the audience. Hi, how are you? Thank you for being here this afternoon. I believe so, or they're going to get it on for you. It's on. Hi, Papa Rain. Purple Rain. Oh,
Rain,
Purple Rain. Okay.
Purple Rain.
You're good. What are the next steps that you want to see for next year?
That's a beautiful question.
Thank you, Purple Rain.
Thank you so much, Purple Rain. I want to see our organization continue to grow in what we offer and provide to our community, in our parade, in our city, grow in terms of who gets involved. We're a big, diverse group of volunteers, and we can grow. There's so many more experiences that aren't reflected in our meetings, in our decision-making, that can be. And so we want to take the time to build an infrastructure where more voices are brought to the table, and there's always a process of when that's happening. Thank you.
We actually have one more question.
Hi, my name is Navaya.
Hi, Nevada.
My question was, how did you feel like you balanced the socioeconomic inclusivity in planning the event and like pride in general?
And I was also wondering, for like the volunteers, like a lot of people who are in a lower socioeconomic class might not be able to volunteer. So how do you feel like you accounted for that?
So I'm going to surmise the questions. They were asking Adriana about how you include those that may be in a lower socioeconomic salary range or lack thereof of salary. How are you intentional, if I understand right, how are you being intentional about including them and they have opportunities to volunteer? They may have to work 2 and 3 jobs to try to balance. How are you inclusive from that sort of lower socioeconomic part of our population?
Thank you so much for asking, and then thank you all for asking as well. 2 things that are coming to mind for us. We had an LGBTQ plus and BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color marketplace, and for that marketplace, a number of our vendors that presented there did not have to pay a tabling fee to be there because we wanted to center and uplift those communities. We also have For our volunteers, there are a number of ways that you can volunteer. We volunteered, you could volunteer the day of, but a lot of folks volunteered before in the evening on our committees to help plan in the evening. And we had a lot of folks who couldn't attend the day of, but they're like, hey, I have 30 minutes on this day, can this be used? And we were able to work with folks to be able to engage with us in that way.
So you basically offer sort of an a la carte. These are the time slots, these are the areas where we need help, come one, come all.
Exactly.
Okay. Adriana, thank you. This is, I'll say history, because you were my first guest here on Java with Jimmy at GBH. Can we please give Adriana a hand and thank her for being here with us today? Thank you all so much. We're going to take a quick break. We are coming back with BAMS Fest. Catherine Morris and also Nick, a music producer, they're going to come and talk with us about the BAMS Fest conference and how they're also using the arts in activism. We will be right back with you. Let's give Adriana another hand.
Thank you. Thank you all.
He's talking.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are back here for Java with Jimmy at GBH. I am excited to have my next two guests with me. We started by talking about pride, and we're getting ready to continue the conversation around arts and activism. I am honored this afternoon, and I'm smiling because I really don't have any idea of how one of my guests is going to respond when I introduce her. But I will start with my other guest and then let her wrap it up. We are this afternoon favored and honored to have Nick with us. He is a music producer here in the city of Boston. I also, because I've seen him in community, he is an activist, and so I think it's most apropos that he is here with my other guest that's going to speak. And I don't know why she was messing with me before we came back live, and those in the audience saw it going on. And so I would like to introduce to some and present to others first the mother of arts and black arts and culture here in the city of Boston and the region. Yes, I said the mother. Put your hands together for Catherine T. Morris, who is the founder and artistic director of the Boston Arts Music Soul Fest.
All right, you got it. You got the acronym.
Thanks to Annie. We made sure we had the acronym.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to
Absolutely. So, Catherine.
Yes.
Please, I'm going to check in with you. And because I was familiar with the secret sauce last year
Oh, yes.
of
Secret
how
sauce.
you, and that would be a whole show about the process of how you get on BAM's Fest bill. But I know that it is a rigorous process. I also know that when you are working, folks like yourself, Sheena Collier with the Family Reunion, the past few years when black and brown people are coming together in the masses, it's been interesting. It's interesting also in the fundraising. It's interesting in the organizing. It's interesting in dealing with artists. And so, Mother, you thought you were going to get
My
me. How about
children.
that? How are you doing, Mother Morris?
Well, the good thing is I am an actual mom, so
Yes.
thank you very much. Of a beautiful 5-year-old. I feel like the word today is fulfilled.
Fulfilled?
And the reason why is that it's taken me 10 years to get Bands Fest off the ground. It's taken me 10 years.
10 years?
10 years.
And this is what
The
iteration?
5th year, okay?
Okay.
And to see the city transform,
Yes.
to see more black women carrying their communities through the arts,
Yes.
to see the storytelling, to see more women of color in office, to see more young people on the front lines battling it out to ensure that the next generations have opportunities, to see our elders tell stories, right? I'm fulfilled.
Fulfilled.
I am.
You can tell that Mother watches the platform often because she did her one word. And so, I wasn't looking for one word. I was looking for a whole dissertation, but you gave that.
Listen,
You gave
you got a
that.
show. I'm trying to stay on.
So you're fulfilled, and you actually, we'll talk about that later, but there's something going on after here.
Yes.
Okay. We'll talk about that in a second. So when I checked in with you, I asked you, Catherine, or Kat, as some of us have the opportunity to call you. Not every, y'all, if you see her on the street, please don't walk. Hi, Kat, how are you? Don't do that. I asked you to bring someone with you
Yes.
that is an artist that also moves in activism, that takes that artistry and changes lives, becomes a change agent. Doesn't mean that every track is always the actionable, go do something that may be a party track or just a real life track, but someone that moves in the space of using their art with activism.
Yes.
I would like to ask you
Oh.
to do the introduction of our other guest today. which is Nate Nick. I can do a little bit of an introduction.
Oh, well, you start. I'll come up
and
I'll round it
you'll
out.
clean it up. Okay.
Absolutely.
So Nate Nick is a young man that I have seen in community for at least, I don't want to lie, I'll say about 5 years, associated with the great program ran by a good friend and brother, Abigail Foster, teen empowerment here in Boston, very active in the electoral politics process of getting folks elected that share values of a lot of our young people and those that have been through a lot of things in life. And so that's part of my introduction of Nate Nick. What would you add to that?
Is it Nate Nick or Nate Nicks with
Nate
an
Nicks.
S? Okay,
Nate
Mama's
Nicks.
going to correct you now. Okay.
I said you was going to clean it up.
Listen.
I didn't look at all my
Names
notes
are
here.
important. Someone gave us
They
names.
are absolutely.
Okay. No, I'm
They
just
are
kidding.
absolutely. What does Catherine mean?
I'm not telling
I'm
you.
gonna-
I'm not going there. Greatness.
I'm gonna get you back. Greatness. Yes.
Okay. Nate Nicks. Woo. A brethren, a leader, quiet leader, someone who has care and concern in his heart for young people, someone who uses his words and his actions to make statements that are going to lead to further the movement, whatever that's going to be, and someone I respect and love.
Thank you.
The Nate Nicks.
Thank
It's
you.
just a whole love fest up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it.
Appreciate that.
Nate, please forgive us for saying Nate. Nick,
It's all
Nate
good,
Nicks.
it's all
Tell us about yourself, and I guess I'll go with what Catherine volunteered one word, but I also know you move in spaces where you advocate for those that are the most marginalized.
Yeah.
You work with young people. You're a black man in Boston.
Yep.
How you doing, bro?
I'm all right.
You all right?
I'm okay. I say like community is like the word. I always feel my community wherever I go. I think oftentimes I find myself in spaces where I kind of have to represent my community because we're oftentimes underrepresented in the city and kind of like where we would find ourselves, what we would call the mainstream. So sometimes it's hard, but I think that it's also become like a privilege of mine to represent my community everywhere I go. So, you know, because I'm always reminded of like Roxbury, my home, where, you know, culture is just, it's everything. And arts is everything. So everywhere I go, I feel like, you know, being able to wear that on my shoulder, wear that on my sleeve always just feels like a privilege, you know, honoring those that came before me and those who are here today and also those to come. You know what I mean? Some of the young people that I work with in Roxbury, it just reminds me of them all the time. So I think community, but I'm feeling okay.
Absolutely, that's good to hear. Now, you're a music producer, but I'm also aware that you rap,
Yeah.
write,
Yep.
produce tracks. We got this.
Okay.
Okay. And so, you know, we wanted to possibly, you know, get a little sample. You are one of the performers
yeah.
on BAMS Fest this year.
I am.
You made the cut.
I did.
The only reason why I'm saying it like that, and I know your artistry is wonderful, I really saw what this team goes through with getting the submissions, some incomplete. And so if you ever are going to submit to BAMS Fest, please check every box and send everything that you need to send. But Nate, can we get, and I'm not good with 8 bars, a bar, can we get a little sample from you from your artistry?
I can give you a little something, but you got to give me something in return.
What?
Can you give me a snap count? So just like, you know, and keep that going. Okay. If we could do that, then I can kill. All right. Yeah. I'm working while in college, trying to conquer this degree. Look down at my feet, what you see costs a fee, yeah. I've been rocking with Adidas, hoping that they see this, cause these sneakers not gonna feed us. If your leaders jump the ship, would you follow suit and leave them undefeated like a clean sweep or brush them underneath you? When the money flows, are you Walter or Benita? Would you trade that soul in exchange for the features? I'm asking for myself, I wanna see how others would fare, because my leaders are my heroes and my heroes are scared. See, they don't look like me, they don't relate to the tortures I'm enduring. Every second I'm awake as a black male living in America entails. My rights are but a fantasy, especially in a cell. From the famine to the feast, I find our future fixed to fail. For this fairy tale of freedom don't depict us very well. Oh, brother, I'll leave it there.
Whoa! Listen, Nate Nix.
Oh, you do.
I've seen you around, but I've never heard you spit.
Yeah, hey, listen.
Okay. So I'm going to go back and forth with you and Catherine. Catherine, Nate is an example of the artists that are coming to BAMS Fest, but you're not just doing a concert this year. Tell us about this fifth iteration of BAMS Fest. What's going on this year?
Well, like anything, I believe in the philosophy, go big or go home.
Go big or go home. I mean,
Go big or go home.
Listen.
Right? So we start off as a 1 day, and now we're 3 days.
yes.
Okay?
Yes, and that has been,
I can only expect the best from Boston.
Yes.
But what's important is that with arts, you have to have the variables of knowledge
yes.
and collaboration and connectivity. And so we decided this year to add a conference at Berklee College of Music to ensure that our artists, our creatives, our culture workers, all the folks whose imagination allows us to benefit and live our lives actually starts coming together.
Yes.
We're very disconnected, we're very siloed. I get tired of all the complaining.
Right.
So at that point,
You
Mama
know
just
what?
got to
I don't
bring
have
everyone
my,
together.
I just realized out of everything we did today, I don't have my cup to take a sip because that justified the sounds. Go ahead, Mother.
It's important that as a city, we not only just talk about it, we walk about it. So that means that it requires us to actually be in space and community with each other.
Yes.
It requires the exchange of information, lived experiences, stories, to figure out a better way, or this new Boston we keep talking about.
Yeah.
So this conference this year is the first time that we are bringing together the entire creative economy at the intersection of entrepreneurship, design, commerce, business, women empowerment, because if we don't, we'll continue to be siloed.
Continue to be siloed and then not recognize for the impact. Music in every movement has been a large catalyst for getting the message across. Nate, let me ask you about those bars. What is the story in those bars? Catherine talked about the stories. I'm going to go back to bringing everybody together, but what is the story in those bars that you shared with us?
Yeah, so in some of the work that I do with the youth organizers at Teen Empowerment, oftentimes we find ourselves doing research to really understand what is the root cause of a lot of what we're dealing with. What are the root cause of some of the systemic inequities that we experience on a day-to-day basis and how that impacts us. And so in doing that research, I think it's really just about setting an example for myself and for my peers, and reminding us that, like, no matter where we came from, like, there's a struggle behind that. You know what I mean? We've seen our family members locked up and, you know, due to, like, incarceration on different forms and, like, mandatory minimum sentencing, which has run rampant across, like, our state. Like, it's interesting, like, the way Massachusetts has worked over the last 20 years to kind of, like, diminish some of that stuff, but 20 years too late, in my opinion, you know what I mean? Okay. And so when we've seen these things, we really face the impacts of them on a consistent basis. And so that was kind of like my ode in some ways to honoring the struggle that we deal with and also bringing a reality to it in a way that we can really, like, conceptualize it and internalize it in a way that doesn't feel harmful or abrasive, but instead allows us to, like, nod our head and understand.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've learned to understand from Catherine, and I can't remember the brother's name that oversees the Mass Cultural Council, he often said, Michael, yeah, Michael what?
Michael Bobbitt.
Exactly, Michael Bobbitt. Hi, Michael. He often names the number in general about the contributions that the arts make to Massachusetts economy. I don't know if he's broken down how many black and brown artists or the genres or whatever, but you're being very intentional about the economic and the entrepreneurship with us as artists. I have often told Mother Catherine that though I'm a podcaster, I mean, yes, I do sing and do the directing, but I move more in the space of podcasting, and you've been very open and welcoming to that type of artistry. Where do you see the impact of music going when it comes to equality or economic equality?
I'm going to expand that. What I see, the impact of Black imagination. Black imagination.
Black imagination, and how would that translate to, go ahead.
The arts isn't just music.
Yes, that's right.
It's dance, it's filmmaking, it's glass blowing, it's archery. Like, I can go down the list of all the things.
It's podcasting.
Podcasting, right?
Throw that on the table.
And for generations, everyone has profited off of that except us. We have not been able to advance.
They always say the artists are the
economically.
last to be paid.
They are, but they're the first to be relied on when anyone goes through trauma.
Go a little bit deeper there.
What I mean by that is that artists, creatives, they are interpreters of the time in which they live in.
Yep.
They reflect what they go through.
Yes.
Right?
Yep, I got you.
Right?
Yep.
Every generation has a soundtrack. Every generation has a museum of art. Every generation has a dance that reflects what's going on during those times.
Couple dances.
Right?
Yes.
So future generations that look back at us can refer to a time when something happened, because there is a trilogy, there is a record of all of our lived experiences in which an artist chose at that moment to translate for that generation. So the economic impact is pay artists. They deserve that. It is hard to get up every single day and create from scratch while the majority of us are told what to do. You can't tell an artist what to do,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
But it's important that if we're going to continue to rely on artists to help us, make us feel good and get us through the times, they have to be compensated like you would your doctor.
Right. But like you would your doctor, and I don't know if you were intentional about that, but you just talked about the fact of the artist, you, Nate, you're an artist as well. Because what you're putting together in BAMS Fest is beautiful.
Right.
And the artistry in that, to be able to organize, mother, raise the funds and whatnot, that's art in itself. But we'll talk about that later.
Whole nother show.
Yes, a whole nother show. But the piece about being just as much as we pay the doctors, based on what you said about being the healers and the first ones that are addressing trauma, I love how you talked about the track. You maybe didn't say track, but of our time. Nate, what do you think 15 years, 20 years from now, a young aspiring artist, what are they going to look at this track, this record, the project, the record of this generation? What does that sound like?
Can I be honest?
Absolutely.
I think it sounds like BAMS Fest. Like if I'm being
That
real,
was, listen,
you know,
that was good.
because-
That was good. That was
because
good.
when I
But
think
come on, go
about
deeper.
myself as an artist, right? I think about like the areas that I've been in, and I think about like where I kind of draw motivation from, and it's like, you know, the folks that I've been able to be mentored by in some ways as an artist, right? I think of like the Oompas and like the Cliff Notes of like
Shout out
my
to Sister
era,
Oompa.
you know what I mean? And so when I see them, I think that like to me like BAMS Fest is kind of like synonymous with Boston art, just the same way that those names are as well. And if I'm coming up and I'm thinking about where I want to be 20 years from now, I want to be able to kind of like see other artists on that same stage. You know what I mean? I want to be able to see that stage elevated to whatever the vision is so that newer artists can step onto that same platform and be able to launch themselves into that stratosphere that hopefully all the artists that perform at BAMS Fest this year and beyond can also be launched into. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that. We're going to take questions in 1 minute, but I want to ask Catherine something that's totally off, and you'll get me for this later.
It's not on paper.
It's not on the paper.
Oh, all right now.
With AI,
Shame.
It's such
No,
a
I'm just kidding.
podcast.
with AI doing what it's doing in our society, what's going on with the Writers Guild and things like that, where do you see, if any, a relationship between AI and the authenticity of a musician and an artist? Uh-oh.
Continue.
No, because I see that, I
I
see
was-
your lips about to perch. Where do you see that? Are we going to get away from that authenticity? Nate's a writer. He sits, presumably, with a pad or on a computer or on the phone. Will our artistry turn to write me a track about the red dress and the brown shoes?
I don't think it will. I think we're in a trend.
Okay.
And the reason why is because artistry requires human interaction. And you always need that. Period. Right? So Nate can't write unless he's gone through something or he's experiencing something through someone else's lens to be able to produce, you know, a work of art that is going to benefit or get someone through. AI can't do that. right? So as long as we're beings,
Yes.
human beings,
Yes.
socialization is required.
Absolutely.
In order for any movement, any civilization to move forward or move through, you have to have interaction. So I feel like AI is a trend at the moment right now that we're going to pass through, but the basis of our existence is actually having conversation.
Thank you. And that's what we're doing here. That's
Right,
absolutely what
exactly.
we're doing here. We're actually going to continue the conversation. We have questions, one question from the audience. Purple Rain is back with a question.
Hey.
Purple Rain, Purple Rain.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
My question is, of all the places you could have did BAMS Fest, why did you pick Boston? I love Boston, but why did you make that your city to do this in?
I mean, here's the thing. I get tired of people dogging my city. Like, we have so much to offer. I know we got other things that we offer, but the arts is one of the most overlooked, most dependent, stable contributors to this city. And I am tired of people dogging it. So at this point, I'm going to amplify the city. I'm going to carry it on my back as I've always done and show everyone that we're not known for just healthcare, we're not just known for education, but we can compete with the best creatively.
Absolutely.
And there's no better place in the world except Boston anyway.
Facts.
Yes.
Now we're getting into it.
Does anyone else have a question? I think we have one more. Saw someone pointing. We have one more coming this way. Purple Rain is out here directing traffic here in the news cafe.
I love it.
Hi, Jimmy. Hi.
How are you? Thank you for being
Hi.
here.
I know you actually went to your showing of The Woman King.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
Cheyenne. So my question is, you stated that it took you 5 years to get BAMS Fest off the ground. Where do you see BAMS Fest in the next 5 years? Do you see it being like something similar to an Essence Fest with talented people, like not Ice Spice?
Here's. So I'll say this. BAMS Fest occupies 18.5 acres of green space at Franklin Park. Franklin Park is 527 acres.
Say it again slowly.
I'm sorry.
So we can put that in a, no,
Okay,
seriously.
got it.
Yep.
Franklin Park is 527 acres of green space. BAMS Fest currently occupies 18.5. 300 of that is usable. I want 300 acres.
Not 40 acres
Now I want
and a mule. You want 300 acres.
so that BAMS Fest is a multi-weekend, multi-experiential festival that amplifies every corner of artistry and Black imagination across New England now. And it boasts the economic impact in our community so that the circulation of $8 triples. So that businesses don't have to leave, artists don't have to leave, but also that we're connected to Mother Nature,
Yep.
our green space.
Thank you for that question. I just want to acknowledge my brothers and sisters that are in the room with me. That question came from one of the members, or one of the siblings of the members of Boston Wild Black. But Boston Wild Black is in the room, so we really appreciate them. We have one more question from the audience, and I'm going to ask this of Nate. What thoughts do you have to move away from the expectation that creatives should give away their work for free to a system that compensates them and makes their work sustainable?
That's a great question.
It is, and I know Mother wants to follow up with it, but
I think that what we can do as an artist community first and foremost is change our mindset as well about the art that we're creating. I think sometimes we undervalue ourselves in
Yes,
some ways,
yeah,
and so
okay,
we're just
yeah.
giving it away. You know what I mean? Like, art is powerful, art is change, art is community, art is a movement. You know what I mean? Like, everything that you're working to create, that's time and that's equity, right? You know what I mean? That's energy spent. You can't get that energy back. That's equity. And so when we're talking about like how we see our own art, in my opinion, I feel like it's gonna be tough to see any type of like shift in that dynamic between like corporations, organizations, in a way that they kind of like utilize, or I'll say like underutilize and misuse artists in some ways, and the way that we see our own art. If we can't shift the way that we see it, and we can't shift our own perspective and the value of what it is that we're creating, and we can't expect other people to do the same. So it starts with the artist. I want to see more artists putting a value on themselves and recognizing the importance of their work, the significance of their work. Our communities don't run the same if we don't have artists. Like, when I think about Haley House, like in Roxbury, like Haley House would not have existed for so long if it wasn't for the artists being able to like curate that space into what it is today. And like, that's a cultural staple. You know what I mean? So I think that they have a way of valuing the artist. I want to see the artists do the same.
Absolutely. That is from the internal. We can give them a hand. That's from the internal piece, and I'm going to ask Catherine to close it out from the external, because I know that question resonates with you because you often talk to us about valuing ourselves. You often talk about the importance of, I'll just simplify it, getting the bag when you have rehearsed, you wrote tracks, you picked a uniform, you've got backup singers and a band, and they come out and give you $110. What is that? So from the external standpoint, as we get ready to wrap up, how do the entities that was referred to by my good friend Suzanne Walmsley from BAA that's in the building, how do folks like, just for example, a BAA, a Boston Pride for the People, how do they ensure that when the artist values themselves, they don't feel like they are getting disvalued or devalued when they don't get what they ask for?
I think it's important. One of the things that Bands Fest did early on is that we asked artists what is kind of like the new livable wage. And the reason why that's important is because it changed how we actually pay artists. We can't operate on 1980 prices.
No.
When inflation happens every couple of years, the cost of living is skyrocketing, and what artists go through, whether they're musicians or dancers, they have to put much more into it now than ever because COVID changed everything.
Yes.
Period, right?
Yes.
So just imagining that $110 split by 5 people, they can't even get a Happy Meal. Like straight up, economics,
Yes.
right?
Economics of it.
So when you are an organization that is thinking about hiring an artist, you need to be asking them, right? Don't assume.
Right.
Like, oh, they'll be okay with 50. No. You gotta go a little higher. You gotta
$50?
Oh yeah, there's a couple of institutions that do that. I will not name them on your show. But the point is, yesterday's prices
Are not today's prices. Listen, put your hands together for Catherine T. Morris and also Nate Nix, my guest here. It was an honor and privilege today to be here at GBH studios here at the News Cafe at Boston Public Library. I would like to thank, first of all, I want to thank my mother who is watching online. For those of you that don't know, she asked the question on March 24th at the end of a live and said, will this be an everyday coffee hour? And 3.5 years later, we are not only here, but we are here. And wow, that just hit me. That just hit me. Okay, I have to wrap up. I really want to thank the senior management of Tech, Glenn Heath, who was or is here in the building. He was working cameras. Glenn, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Also, our engineer. I'm going to say operations Chris Hanks first, and then I'm going to say our engineer Eddie Hickey, because I just know that young man was going to work until we were able to make this work and get the comments and things up from StreamYard like we do every day. So Eddie and Chris, thank you so much. The GBH studio manager, Evelyn. Actually, I'm going to save these two for last. Executive leadership, Pam Johnson, Lee Hill, Tina Cassidy, and also Sandra Lopez-Burke, who is in the building, who was with me earlier today, making sure I make it here on time today. The GBH creative, Matt Welch for the graphics, GBH events, Abby Blake, and shout out to the Newsfeed Cafe, the Boston Public Library, and also I would like to thank, she just started, Rachel, who is the intern here that is helping out. Thank you so much, Rachel. And the last two people I want to thank in reference to GBH, Evelyn Brito and Annie Shepard. These women have been on the phone with me. They've emailed, they've texted, and I really, really appreciate them. I'm crying now because I told folks this morning I haven't had the chance to really absorb this. I'm not supposed to be here, This was not, what I mean by that was, this was not an intended thing. I just wanted to help the community get ready for COVID. And so Annie and Evelyn, I really appreciate both of you so much. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your skill set. Thank you for mentoring. Thank you for pouring into me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for pushing back. And finally, there's some folks from my team that have been with me for years, and that is the Keys, Rachel, who is here, and also someone who is helping me get to the next level. Anthony Davis, and the Davis system is here as well. And so, bro, I appreciate you. That is it for me for the first of many to come, of Java with Jimmy at GBH. Put your hands together. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Let's hear it again for Jimmy.
The mother's board, a couple of them are here. No, not, well, we got one mother here, but the mother's board, they're all watching online at home.
All right, thank you all for coming. How many people had a good time? And for how many of you was this your first time in this space? How many of you have been here before? First time. Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming. You know where to find Java with Jimmy on social media. You know where to find GBH. And we have one request. Get to know somebody before you leave who you did not know before you came. All right? All right. Thank you for coming. Have a blessed night. Onward.